Shalom. Greetings, everyone. I am Brother Spence, once again, in the Lion's Den. Give thanks and praise. That higher meditation to raise up that positive vibration. So, in these dark days, these last days of wrath and judgment, we see many of us must shine that light. And this is people from all walks of life. With that being said, I say Shabbat Shalom, Simba Salam, and Sabbath peace to one and all. Sabbatical blessings. Don't get it twisted. For those of my viewers that have been watching these videos for the past year, or the past year and a half, under the title Brother J Spence. That is me. That is INI. We're still keeping it real. Yes. We still meditate in Jah word, the scriptures, and that Torah of life from Genesis to Revelation and so forth. And what we call the Bible today. Don't get it twisted. We're still striving to read the weekly Torah portion studies or the Earth Strong Torah portion studies for each cycle. That comes first and foremost at all times, 24/7. We meditate, we pray. When we meditate in Jah Torah or Jah word, even as His Imperial Majesty teaches, Haile Selassie I, Haile Selassie I teaches, for my part, I glory in the Bible. So yes, we're still keeping it real 100% at all times. That's not what I'm really trying to say in this video, because the safe haven utopia is a surrounding. Yes, it's on a very universal scale, very similar but different scale. We still have that cynical humor. We still have that subtle, distinct comedy, or that cryptic message within little fragments of comedy and dark humor and all that kind of mixed up. If you pay attention, I was kind of doing that this past year and a half, even with the Brother J Spence series. But we have evolved, and for those that subscribe to that and think, well, Brother Spence is not putting out Torah portion readings anymore on his YouTube page. But see, this very time last year, I laid the groundwork, that spiritual groundwork, the groundation. For now, we focus on righteous liberty, or as many of I say, liberty, or a natural way of life, a true spiritual way of life that is set apart from religion. To be truly set apart and truly righteous in this life, no matter what you call yourself, a fellow Israelite, or a fellow Christian, or Christ man, or Rasta man, or Muslim, or Buddha, or Buddhist, or Taoist, or any kind of philosopher, even agnostic or atheist. I used to be agnostic. I never was atheist. I always believed in a higher power. But in reflection to the previous vlogs this past week regarding the old school days, volumes 1 through 4, that is meant to be through faith and righteous liberty, an example of who I was and many other friends of mine, who they were 25 plus years ago, back in the year 1997, back in the mid to late 90s. The things that we, in my generation, was exposed to in this world system. And of course, in those videos, I laugh, I rejoice in them. it's also a blessing to look back at myself, on my younger self. Wow, Brother John, Brother Spence, you've come such a long way as a man. Wow. But also, thank you, Lord. Thank you, God. Thank you, Jah, for guiding me this whole step of the way for the past 25 years, because without you, I would not be alive today in the flesh. This past week, I spent my Friday last week, or last strong cycle, driving around town to 3 different pawn shops. Even one pawn shop that I worked at over 20 plus years ago, but nobody has VCRs. I thought I had at least 2 or 3 down here in the basement at the house. I had one that does not rewind. It will play the tapes, but it does not rewind. I don't know why there was a porno flick or some kind of like cheap porn flick videotape in there. I swear that was not mine. I don't know who did that. But anyways, it would not rewind, but it would play, it would eject. So I spent a good hour and a half driving around town to 3 different pawn shops. And I was told to go to this place called Cash Converters on Williamson Road in Roanoke, Virginia. And I went there and I bought the last VCR for $15. And so, I was able to travel back in time. Yes, I was able to travel back in time as that cryptic message or reference to the classic movie Back to the Future, with Michael J. Fox or Marty McFly and Doc Brown. So I'm basically viewing these videotapes down here in this basement, watching my old TV screen with these old videotapes I dug up. These old tapes I've dug up here in the past couple weeks. We have John's Life from 1992. John's Life 92. Wow, I was a baby. We have, what else? We have the New Year's Eve of 1998. I don't think we're ready for that yet. Definitely not kosher or Sabbath friendly as of right now. And then we have Hot Times in America, or the old school days. I've been looking for the footage of when I went to Jamaica back in the summer of 1999, about 23 years ago, I would think. The next girlfriend of mine, one of my spiritual ex-wives or ex-girlfriends from over 20 years ago. We had a good time. We took a vacation. We took a nice vacation through High Times magazine. That's right. This was back in the late 90s. High Times magazine on a Sunsplash tour to Jamaica for a week. So we have one of these tapes. It's a mission trip in 1998. The mission trip with the Christian church at First Baptist, and then the next year having this intimate love covenant relationship with my ex-girlfriend, or one of my ex-girlfriends, who was from a Hindu family. Beautiful Indian girl from a Hindu family. And the cultural influence I have with that former agnostic, now non-denominational newborn Christian, yet I was still smoking the herb and hanging out with my hippie friends and my punk rocker friends and my fellow hip hop MCs and hip hoppers and dirty hippies and metalheads. I was still hanging out, keeping it real as more of a true baby Christian spiritually. I wasn't buying into denomination. I wasn't really going to church that much at all back then. But this interest and love I developed for the Bible, and the influence of the One Love music, through roots reggae music, many of Bob Marley's lyrics, and Peter Tosh, and Bunny Wailer, and Burning Spear, and Augustus Pablo. That's right. Give thanks. Augustus Pablo with many artists, Yabayu, Israel Vibration, Culture, Steel Pulse, and that earlier influence of bands like Bad Brains, the hardcore punk rock band from DC, Rastafarian, all Rastafarian punk rock band, from that era of true punk rock music. A lot of old school punk rockers love Bad Brains to this day, just like the Dead Kennedys and Black Flag and all that good stuff. So the influence, the spiritual reggae influence from Bad Brains and bands like Sublime, Sublime was a great band of all time. One of the greatest bands of all time, I would say. And it was very popular back in the late 90s. I think mid to late 90s, Sublime got pretty big. So that was another influence to roots reggae music. My lady's calling me. 1 second. Right. My apologies. That was my lady checking up. Anyways, so going back to our trip to Jamaica, to High Times Magazine on the Sunsplash tour. Me and my ex-girlfriend at the time got a flight on Air Jamaica, and for only, it was like 600 or $700 for 7 days, minus the food, minus the American dollars that you translate or transfer to Jamaican money to buy food and all that good stuff. But it was a pretty good deal back then, so we took advantage, and experience, that experience shaped my life. Seeing a third world country outside of the core of daughter Babylon, even though all these countries and corrupt governments and third world countries and even places like America are parts of Babylon, but just seeing, that third world influence and more sufferation and downpression of the people, especially the majority of the African, West Indian, or Jamaican people, majority of black people, but people of all races living in shanty towns and downpression from their corrupt government as well. It's all connected to one Babylon system, as it speaks of in the Bible. His Majesty teaches, for my part, I glory in the Bible, that fulfilled Torah of life. So, once again, don't get it twisted. I begin to learn more about the Rasta culture out there. My ex-girlfriend and I stayed there in West Jamaica, like the western part of Jamaica, for about a week. We got to see the YS Falls. We got to see and meet actual Rastas, those dreadlock and fellow bald head Rastas that were claiming His Majesty. But even they are 1% of the whole Jamaican population. We saw the majority of commoners and people out there still under this sufferation. We see that fulfillment of prophecy as I began to grow in grace as a newborn, spiritually speaking, newborn baby Christian, non-denominational Christian with that one love spirit, that natural, or should I say that original hippie spirit or one love spirit, with an open mind, just learning about this, learning about that. I learned about Hinduism from the same ex-girlfriend and her culture, a little bit. I learned more about the mystics even at a young age, and I kept smoking the ganja. And that ganja, that herb in Jamaica, it changed my life. So it changed my life for the better. I come back to America. I come back to Roanoke, Virginia. in my hometown at the age of 20, about to turn 21, and I kept seeking the spiritual path in the Bible. And I dabbled with forms of Christianity to kind of connect the dots, and I've also gotten burned by hippo Christians as opposed to true fellow Christians of heart that like to be more religious and spiritual. So this is why I put out these videos, because being Kodesh, being holy or set apart, is a liberty. It's not a religion. It's not that you can't still indulge in the wonderful things of life, the good things of life. You can, every once in a while, you can go out and celebrate. If you're into clubbing, I'm not into the clubs that much, but my lady and I, sometime last year, went out to this local club downtown called Corned Beef, and we danced and we had a good time. But we kind of looked at, we kind of looked around us like we don't really fit in anymore, and this is kind of lame. But other people were having a good time. It has a strong worldly vibration. It's not my particular cup of tea. But we love live music. So even with that, going out to other worldly atmospheres where there's drinking and celebration of life, more than likely a music venue through live music and even a bar atmosphere or even a bar and restaurant kind of atmosphere is a good atmosphere despite the worldly attributes that go along with it. You have to filter that out. You have to do everything in moderation. Don't drink too much if you choose to drink. Don't smoke too much outside of smoking the herb. You can never smoke too much ganja or too much herb. That's a higher meditation, despite what Babylon system tells you. And now that influenced me to grow in that direction. But really, it was the encounter with fellow Rastas, both fellow bald head and even dreadlock Rastas, or Rastafari, that I encountered in Winter Park, Florida, years ago. In Winter Park, Florida, outside of Orlando, Central Florida, had a lot of encounter with fellow Rastas, and I began to learn more, and hang out with them and smoke with them, and burn the ancients, and play the bongo drums and the djembe and the heartbeats of the Nyabingi, that kind of roots influence. But my encounter with fellow Muslims, fellow Christians down there in that melting pot, and coming back up here and then trying to fit back into the churchianity world. And nothing against all Christian churches. I preached in my previous vids, my previous vlogs, and Brother Jay Spence, the Brother Jay Spence series, about how it's not all churches. There's a lot of genuine Christian churches out there still, but you have to look for them. You have to use discernment, and you have to weigh out the pros and cons. But that's for another time. That's for a different lecture and a different time. But I began to search in this great book of life. And for me personally, not speaking for everyone, but for I personally, it just did not mesh up. It was still part of the growing process, which I give thanks for, but it was not my cup of tea. Just to speak for myself. Just to speak for, turn this down. Just to speak for myself and many others out there. It's not for everyone. Assembly is good. Fellowship is good. I'm not going to stop or reject saying that fellowship is good if it's the right type of fellowship. But right now, in the previous couple years of my life on this narrow path, I just began to learn and seek in that direction. Still as a genuine, non-denominational Christian / Rasta curious, reggae-farian type throughout my middle to late 20s, early 30s. I began to really, embrace that through the influence. Still listening to roots reggae music and, still listening, of course, still keeping it real, listening to hip hop, true underground hip hop and old school rap and metal and punk rock and just variation of good music, jazz, blues, going back to the roots of rock and roll music, just all that embracing with roots reggae music and that spiritual influence of what led me to seek Rastafari. So then after so much time goes by, even with my fellow reggae ambassadors, Brent Hoskins and Brother Gabe Lewis, aka the ambassador. Um, I decided to take it a few steps further in that same Christ mind, and that's that same universal spirit of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the gospel of Yeshua, the Messiah, and the first advent. So I kept it in that Christ mind, but I began to take it a few steps further through that precious name, the new name, Rastafari.
Who regard you as the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. I hear about so-called Rastas who convert to Jesus or who convert to Christianity as though it's like something kind of new. It makes me wonder, well, what did they get involved in to begin with? When you understand the truth of Rastafari and of Kelamawi Haile Selassie, the foundation for this, the true foundation, shall I say, for this way of life is Jesus Christus, is the Bible, is prophecy, is being, in fact, Rastafari is the true Christian man, the Son of Man, in prophecy, in revelation, that Getachew Jesus Christus spoke of. So when you hear people say that I was Rasta but I converted to Christianity, you really have to ask yourself and ask them what form of Rastafari or what Rasta did they convert to, and really question it, because the foundation of Rastafari is Getachew Jesus Christus. That's just a point of order. We'll definitely touch on those. And when the Lamb opened the second seal, silence covered the sky. Yeah, contradictory and conflicting teachings or conflicting theories or ideas that do not agree or reflect the teachings of His Imperial Majesty have been put forward as Rasta, abbreviation of Rastafari, and have been believed by many folks, and their true spiritual center has been neglected because of miseducation.
All right, so that was a clip of the fellow brethren, the fully christened Rastafari brethren, Rabbi Yadin or Wyndham Yadin of the LOJ Society. That's one of his old vlogs from over 15, 16 years ago through the Ethiopian World Net. There's other ones that used to be Rastafari or Rastafari Sabbatical. Now you have the Rastafari Jews and Rastafari Israelites name or title for his YouTube page. So look up Rastafari Jews or Rastafari Israelites on YouTube. And then you have the other influences of Priest Isaac and other ones that have put out these YouTube videos of teachings and even the mystical teachings. And Yah willing or Jah willing through the airwaves, come to INI. So I have also developed relationships with other Rastas and fellow Rastas and elect Rastafari brethren over the years through social media and that connection as well. And Ras Adonis or Wyndham Yadin focuses on the Judaic and more the Hebraic rooted aspect of Rastafari as far as the original fulfilled Israelite faith and its origin, that true pre-Constantine, I should say true pre-Constantine or original Orthodox Tewahedo Christian faith in parallel to that fulfilled Israelite faith, or that the faith of the Nazarene, Salika, the faith of the Nazarene or the Nazarite as a fulfilled Israelite or a true Christian. So we have Jah word in the scriptures, that fulfilled Torah of life that gives us growth through that love and study of the Bible. From the Bible to the Quran and so forth, we all must unite. Even the Quran tells you to go back and read the Bible, to read the Torah and the Gospel again. So, once again, that original Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo faith, that Ethiopian Orthodox Christian faith, in that harmony with the Israelite faith, or that fulfilled Israelite faith through Christ, or through Messiah, even through his majesty in Jesus Christos, or his majesty in Yeshua, Mashiach. We walk in that direction, as it says in the Bible, as even his imperial majesty, Haile Selassie I, says, for my part, I glory in the Bible. So we look to the Bible. Not from a European, I stress that, and I can't say that enough, not from a European whitewashed perspective, or a Romanized perspective that you see in most forms of counterfeit Christianities. Not all, but most forms of counterfeit Christianities. Protestantism and schism, and Catholicism and schism, Romanism and schism. So we digest the divine lyrics of ones like Bahana Selassie, aka Bob Marley, the great legend himself. He talks about ism and schisms. Give us the teachings of his majesty, the returned Messiah, the returned Christ in the second advent as the King of Kings. Give us the teachings of his majesty. We don't want no devil philosophy. We have to, as peacemakers, as true born-again sons of the Most High JAH, and true righteous sons of man, both born-again sons and daughters of the Most High JAH must come together as the peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers, says Yeshua himself, says Jesus Christ himself. So with that being said, that's kind of where I've come from. These old videos, these old vlogs from 25, even 30 years ago. Yes, how does this young man, this stoner, this slacker from high school, all he cared about was smoking weed, and couldn't even get egg in the hole right. And yes, I look back now at 43 at the cooking video project we had in high school for TV video class. Me and my good buddy Lou could not even get egg in the hole right. Some people call it egg in the basket. It's just you cut a piece of hole, and that's where we first messed up. You cut a piece of hole out of the bread on a skillet, and you fry the egg in the middle. It's just very simple. But I think we got stoned. That's what we called it back then. We got stoned, man. But we got high. we burnt one. We blazed up, and we were late for class on our project day to do our cooking show in the studio at Ruffner Middle School in connection with William Fleming High School back in 1997. Just a few months or just a few weeks before graduation. We only passed that class and graduated because our commercials were so awesome. The beer commercial, the anti-drug commercial, where I'm the druggie having major acid, flashback hallucinations. I'm looking at this girl's face that was played by Rebecca Rogers, who also went to William Fleming with us. And looking at her face, but all I see is a demonic entity that looks like Freddy Krueger coming out of the sky with fire. And so I jump off the building, and we got a dummy with the same clothes I had on, with stuff with newspaper and string, and threw it off the balcony. It was genius. It was awesome. So I look back at these videos and I laugh. I laugh at myself, but it was like I was still going through puberty at the time. My voice was not even cracking. I mean, yeah, it was cracking a little bit, but I just had this light young voice, and this I don't know, man, just oblivious to life kind of mindset. Like, yeah, man. And how can I go from being this stoner, this slacker? And apparently, yeah, I mean, I got attention from the ladies back then. It must have been the baby face. I got the little beard, uh, little beard, or my wisdom has grown back out, but I just got a trim yesterday. Anyway, keeping it trim for the new job back in the school system. They got me back in the Roanoke City schools as a full-time TA or teaching assistant. And so I did that for 5 years, and yeah, another way that I have grown spiritually and mentally on this path. Hmm. Trials and tribulations of life, as we all do. As we all do on different scales, different times. The trials and tribulations of life refine you. They refine us. I'm speaking to all people here, whether you're fellow Christians, fellow Rastas, fellow Israelites, Muslims, Buddhas, agnostics, peace-loving hippies. We're all one family as the peacemakers. We have to go through some shit, for lack of better words. We got to go through some shit in this life to be refined. As fine silver is refined. That's right. As silver is refined in the fire 7 times. Thus saith the Most High JAH. So give thanks and praise for that. Give thanks and praise. That's why you look at my old videos from the late 90s and I'm this burnout stoner, skateboarder, hippie punk. This skater punk slash hippie slash cryptic hip hopper type, because I was big into hip hop. I grew up in the old school 1980s rap and hip hop and through the 90s golden era and early 2000s. So yeah, I grew up with that too. And these are all things that have shaped my life, as years have gone by in this blessed age of information. Right. We never got the flying cars and the hoverboards as they told us we would eventually get back in 2015 and Back to the Future too. No, but we got these. We got these, baby. That's right. Thanks. Blessed love.